Okay, let's continue on with the design for our high-resolution layout here. Now, the slideshow would be next, right? But we're actually going to have a whole pile of exercises, a whole set of lessons dedicated to inserting graphics. So I'm going to skip over the slideshow for now. I'm going to leave him as is, and we're going to head all the way down to the 3 content boxes. So if you want, once again, you could head back to Photoshop for a quick reference for your 3 content boxes. So solid blue background there. We'll get these graphics in just a little bit, as I say. So this should actually be pretty straightforward, although I think I want to throw in an extra CSS rule to kind of help us along a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head back over to the external style sheet. By the way, what I did before I started this exercise is I decided just to start spacing apart some of the rules inside the high resolution media query, just to make it a little bit easier for you to see. So I have the body and the master up at the top there, and then the header and the nav, just trying to sort of group things, kind of logically together. Article and news go together, this sort of thing. I also indented some of my rules there as well. So these guys all belong with nav, for instance. You don't have to do this, but in any regard, I decided to do it. So no changes for our slideshow. We're going to head right down to content box, as I mentioned just a moment ago. Now, what I want to do with my content box is, well, the first thing I want to do is I want to change his background color. So look for your background property there and look for his RGB value there, the 3 RGB color values. I want to use the same blue that you and I had used earlier on. Okay, so in the real world, I'd glance down at my scrap piece of paper and I'd go, oh yeah, 0,80, 125. That's what we sampled out of Photoshop. And then we can save up our work and we can head back over to our browser and refresh. There we go. Perfect. Now, I want to add a little bit more onto this. I've decided again, I just ran you through a bit of a lecture on creative licensing, right? I've decided to make a change here to my layout. If I head back to Photoshop, the text inside the 3 content boxes is black. And I've decided to change the color of the text to white and maybe even throw on some extra font formatting. Now, you don't have to do this again. This is just what I've decided to do here. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a compound rule that is going to control paragraphs, but only if they appear inside a content box. So again, this harks back to the way that we structured our HTML. Okay, so if I head back to my HTML file and I head up to my 3 content boxes, there we have the content box. There's the placeholder text that we inserted, but we inserted that placeholder text inside a paragraph, right? A paragraph element. So now what we can do is we can control this paragraph and isolate it away, if you will, from other paragraphs inside the layout. Here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to say, all right, if I have a content box, I'm sticking this in underneath my original content box. So I'm going to say, all right, if I have a content box that contains a paragraph, okay? Or said another way, if a paragraph appears inside a content box. So I've gone dot content box space P. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to change his color. I said that I wanted the color to be white. So I'm going to go RGB and I'll say 255, 255, 255. That'll give us white text inside the content boxes, or for the paragraphs inside the content boxes. Let's just make sure that this works. Go ahead and save up your work and head back to your browser and refresh. You should get white text now inside your content boxes. But paragraphs outside of content boxes should remain as they were. Okay? So this is a great way for isolating specific areas, specific objects inside your layouts, like paragraphs. Now, there's 2 other things that I want to do to these paragraphs. I want to control their font size, and I also want to throw in a little bit of line height as well. Okay? So I'm going to head back over to my external style sheet. I'm going to look for my new compound rule, content box P. I'm going to drop my cursor in after the closing semicolon, and I'll throw in font-size. Now, earlier I used a fixed font size, 15 pixels. This time what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a percentage, 80%. So in other words, 80% of the default font size. So he should be just a little bit smaller than the default font size. And then the other thing that I want to do is I want to throw in line height. If you're not sure what line height is, it's the space between the lines, the vertical space between the lines in all of the text. If you're coming from the world of print, if you know what leading is, it's exactly the same, except in CSS, we call it line height. Okay, so line height, and I'm going to say 140% of the default. And of course, closing it off with the semicolon there on the end. Go ahead and save up your work, head back over to your browser and refresh, and we should get something like this. Okay, wonderful stuff. Missing the graphics, of course, but the text formatting itself looks pretty good. Now, you're welcome, once again, if you want to go and fiddle around with these settings, maybe increasing your font size or increasing that line height, whatever you'd like to do. Now, for myself, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to the next area inside our layout, which is our news feed. That's next.